Grand Canyon, the most well-known canyon in the United States, 277 miles long and up to 18 miles wide, visited by millions of tourists every year. And we were planning to visit it as well, but not by car, but with a rented airplane. So, in the summer of 2011, I began planning this aviation adventure in Fort Worth, Texas. This voyage would take us over 1,800 nautical miles far, through 4 states. Suddenly, what started as a crazy idea became reality. I was first playing with the thought of making a big trip through the US in the June of 2011. The original goal set at that time was Las Vegas. A friend and his wife agreed to come along, and so I began planning. A couple months later, we were sitting in a Cessna 182, and on the 24th of September, our adventure began. Our tanks were full and all our luggage aboard, which brought us close to our maximum takeoff weight. This journey should now take us from the plain fields of Texas over the mountains near Santa Fe, all the way to the Grand Canyon.
Departure, heading west. Our goal for today is Santa Fe. I don't exactly recall the length of the flight, but the flight itself was totally calm.
For the next hours, we would only see the circular fields of Texas beneath us. But then, after a stop in Plainview, around 2.5 hours west of Fort Worth, the landscape began to change. The fields were replaced by desert. The ground changed into red yellow-toned earth, which was covered in small dark bushes. And slowly, the terrain began to rise. To have enough altitude to get over the first mountain ridges, I climbed up to 9,000 feet.
Johann is gaining altitude. This we need for Santa Fe, because the airport is at 7,000 feet altitude.
Finally, we were on approach into the busy Santa Fe Municipal Airport. After nearly 5 hours of flight, we reached our first destination on this journey. And after a quite bumpy approach, we safely touched down on runway 33. Welcome to Santa Fe. We would stay in Santa Fe for 2 days. We wanted to explore the historical downtown area and enjoy the really good food without any haste. On Monday, we would head on to our next destination, which was Page in Arizona.
Santa Fe. We are staying at the El Rey Inn. Pool, comfortable rooms, very nice. And just $112 per night. That's not too bad. I never thought that you could really eat good in the States. But what we had was really good. Everything was very spicy, but tasted awesome. Rice, beans, ribs and more. At 8:45 in the morning, we are leaving Santa Fe, equipped with oxygen and toast as provisions for our journey.
We spent 2 days in Santa Fe, and it was time to move on. As we wanted to avoid the heat, we planned our departure for the early morning. The aircraft was fully refueled and loaded with our luggage. As we paid the fuel bill, we made sure to get a signature on the flag of our flying club. We wanted to collect signatures of every airport that we would visit.
Clear!
And soon we were on our way to the runway. The upcoming leg would lead us in a 3-hour flight over uninhabited desert. I had planned for a refueling stop in Blanding, Utah. With 7,000 feet density altitude, the takeoff wasn't easy for a pilot that used to fly in a very different climate. Altitude and temperature reduced air density, which in turn reduced the power output of our engine. Slowly, our fully laden Cessna gained altitude. Leaving Santa Fe behind, we passed the last settlements that snuck along in the green along a river. Now we were heading for the desert. No streets, no houses, only rock and sand.
Eine Güte, ist das geil. Traffic, Skyline 1940 X-ray, 4 miles to the southeast for landing, Shiprock. Ach, da ist er. Vor mir, ne, genau. Ach, da ist ja nix. Da ist ja gar nichts. Wo müssen wir denn runter? Habe ich jetzt gerade gesehen, das geht kein Gebäude. Guck mal.
After 2 hours of flight, our body told us to stop, and we were looking for a suitable airport to get some refreshments. Shiprock looked not too bad on the map at all. It had a relatively long runway, and we were hoping for some cool drinks and an air-conditioned lounge.
Traffic, Skyline 1940 X-ray 51, we clear to Shiprock. Meine Güte, was eine Runway. Hammerhart.
What we could see from the air already was confirmed when we were down on the ground. The airport was abandoned, the runway in a bad condition, and only a highway nearby showed signs of any kind of civilization. We had landed on a ghost airport.
Beim Austreten bitte aufpassen auf Schlangen.
Ja, wo kannst du jetzt hier parken? Ah, rechts ist so eine Abstellfläche, da ist auch eine Bank. Oh, so kannst du
Eine Bank, ja, tatsächlich.
Ja, ihr macht das.
So, hallo, willkommen im Nirgendwo in Shiprock.
Jo, hi.
Shiprock und wie man hier sieht, nichts. Nichts außer einer tollen 182er.
Und 3 tolle Personen.
Und 3 tolle Personen, 2 davon hier, eine hier. Es ist genial. Einfach nur geil. Der Flugplatz sieht aus, als wenn er vor Jahrzehnten verlassen wäre. Und die Landschaft Wüste.
After half an hour stay, our engine was running yet again. Just before takeoff I had kicked some stones out of the way that would otherwise have damaged the propeller when taxiing. Then we took off, heading for landing in Utah.
Traffic, Skyline 1940 X-ray, 5 miles to the south for landing runway 17 landing.
Landing Utah. This one is a quiet airport, but still very nice.
23 gallons were added to our tanks in Blanding. That would increase our range by 1.5 hours of flight. At the pump, a man came towards us asking, "Sprechen Sie Deutsch?" And even the mechanic that replaced some missing screws in our cowling had some connections to Germany.
So far we didn't need any oxygen, not yet. We are heading on towards Lake Powell. The pictures speaks for themselves.
With density altitude being at 8,000 feet, we slowly climbed out of Blanding, heading towards Monument Valley. The scenery is known from various Wild West movies, and not much was spoken during the 1-hour transition over it. This was just amazing. After a little more than an hour of flight, we reached Page in Arizona. The city borders to Lake Powell, and we would stay here for 2 days, using it as a sort of base camp for our exploration of the Grand Canyon, which is just 1 hour of flight from here.
We are arriving at Page, and we have crossed another time zone. Now 9 hours are between us and Germany. Andreas and I still feel the jet lag. Johan is fine. I'm always wondering who we are communicating with, but Johan just says no one. It's a uniform frequency, and everyone is responsible for themselves.
Vacating the runway, a golf cart picked us up and guided us to our parking position. Now that's what I call the follow me car. After we got a rental car, we started looking for a hotel. As we found a nice one, we quickly booked 2 rooms before 2 coaches full of guests arrived in the evening. And guess what? The coaches were full of Germans. Here in Page, we had already flown 9 hours so far. 930 miles were now between us and Dallas-Fort Worth. For my European viewers, that's twice the way from Hamburg to Munich. And to extend the statistics here a little more, we had already used up around 135 gallons of F-gas and had landed on 5 different airports. Now, we were close to our destination. 1 hour of flight separated us from the Grand Canyon Airport. At 11 we arrived at the Page Municipal Airport, and at around 12 we were sitting in our Cessna, now heading for the main destination of the journey, the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon Airport is hidden in the woods and wasn't that easy to find over the green carpet of trees. But as soon as we found it, we were down on the ground, sharing a cab with an Australian couple, and we were heading for the Grand Canyon Visitor Center. After hours on the platforms overrun by tourists, we were back in our Cessna in the early evening. Our goal was to cross the Grand Canyon during sunset, and as you're only allowed to cross it via certain corridors and at certain altitudes, we first had to work our way up. The takeoff in 9,000 feet density altitude was like slow motion. And very slowly we climbed up to enter the Zuni Point corridor. At 11,500 feet, we reached the east rim of the canyon, just as the sun began to set in the west. A giant, not describable feeling of tranquility and peace settled among us. And here, 2.2 miles above the ground, it was a very amazing experience. With no words to describe it, just amazing. Breakfast. Breakfast in an American hotel, and all you would hear was German. The travel group had occupied the whole breakfast room, while I was planning the next flight over a cup of coffee. We would fly to Sedona in a single flight. Our aircraft renter had recommended to pay a visit to that airfield, and so we wanted to check it out. So we dropped off the rental car at the airport, refilled our oxygen, loaded the aircraft, and left Page, now heading south. The first part of the flight was over familiar territory, as it led directly towards the Grand Canyon Airport. The next waypoint en route was an apparently small and boring airport that lay next to a highway. As we saw a big silver plane as we passed overhead, we decided to land and check it out. The airport turned out to be a real jackpot. 8 vintage cars decorated the main hall. The airport manager recommended to take a look at the museum, and afterwards he would give us a tour of the private hangars. Then he handed us a car key and said, "Go, grab something to eat first." After lunch we browsed through the hangars and found a lot of vintage airplanes, some of them still airworthy. Among them was a German Messerschmitt Bf-109 and a still flyable Ford Trimotor, as well as a Lockheed Constellation. This was absolutely great. Now, with fuel added to our tanks, we were rolling over a quite bumpy taxiway towards the runway. Destination: Sedona. Sedona would keep us for 2 days. The airport was located on a plateau and we were accommodated in a lodge right next to it. Here we experienced an amazing sunset as well as a beautiful night sky.
Sedona. This is the filming location for various Western movies. One really can imagine how the Indians rode across the prairie. Various movies have been shot here between 1931 and 1994.
Yep.
September 13th. We've left Sedona for Winslow. Here we find a big meteor crater.
The so-called meteor crater is known as the most preserved crater on Earth. It dates back 50,000 years. After a few orbits around the crater, we flew into the Winslow airport close by. As we didn't refuel since Page, it was now time to get some fuel.
Winslow is a boring stopover, but at least they have unsweetened iced tea.
Sugar-free iced tea and blue F-gas had been fueled in Winslow. The weather forecast wasn't the best for Arizona, and so our only goal for this day was to get as far to the east as possible, away from the approaching front of rain and thunderstorms. The next 2 hours were relatively boring and would take us to Beelon-Alexander, a small airstrip south of Albuquerque. For the last time we used the uninhabited desert for low flying. Completely legal here in the US. In Beelon-Alexander we met a German flight instructor from Dortmund, a town close to our hometown.
A man speaks German, Björn. He's from Dortmund, Germany. He's here since 2005 as a flight instructor.
After a short break, we departed for Santa Rosa in New Mexico, the final goal of this day. We had managed to leave the bad weather behind, and as if stopped by an invisible wall, we could see the clouds rising at the horizon. But beyond the mountains, a blue sky awaited us.
Kurz vor 5 in Santa Rosa in New Mexico und wir sind hier auf einem Flugfeld, wie in Shiprock nichts. Unsere Maschine, ein leerer Flugplatz, der Andreas und dann haben wir hier vorne neben einer Tankstelle noch ein kleines Gebäude und da gehen wir jetzt mal rein. Da steht die Claudia und raucht. Und winkt. So, und jetzt sind wir hier bei der Pilot Lounge. Verlassen dieser Flugplatz, außer uns dreien. Und zur Überraschung, die Tür ist offen. Dun, dun.
Santa Rosa was the last airport on our trip that spread the flair of adventure among us. A fully furnished building was openly accessible, something unimaginable for Germany, as it already would have fallen prey to vandalism. Phone numbers for hotel pickups were hanging on the wall, and so we got ourselves a room and were picked up by the hotel manager an hour later. As we drove along the main street, all we saw were empty buildings. The windows nailed shut, everything seemed deserted. This would have made a perfect set for a crime movie.
Kuche. HW, wahrscheinlich Hans-Werner Kuche.
Luftdruck sinkt.
It's a strange feeling to know that our trip is now nearly over. Tonight we will return the airplane to the flight school. But first we wanted to take some pictures. What is now the runway of the airport was the original Route 66 up to 1937. With this historic site we used the opportunity for an extensive photo shooting on the hot tarmac. airborne again, on the penultimate flight with November 1940 X-ray. Our last leg before returning to DFW was Plainview. We wanted to say hello again to Kevin, the friendly airport manager. Kevin greeted us friendly and offered us the keys to a Cadillac, which we used to get into the town to grab a bite to eat. This town was deserted. Straw bundles were flying across the street and most of the shops were closed. But nevertheless, we had some good, great steak there.
On our way home, we again stop in Plainview. Kevin, the airport manager, is happy to see us again. With an old Cadillac, we head into town. It's deserted, but the steak is very good. $30 for 3 persons.
Late afternoon. 2 hours to go to Fort Worth. Everyone went quiet now. It's a strange atmosphere in the cockpit, as if everyone is saying their silent goodbyes. The flight, now over plain fields, is routine. As the autopilot pulls the airplane along the GPS course, I fill the aircraft log. Andreas is watching the airspace, while Claudia is filming. As we landed in Spinks and unloaded the aircraft, a strange feeling settled in. We were sad that this journey was over now, and one had, as strange as this may sound, created an emotional bond with the airplane. The last 7 days were just amazing, and even now, over half a year later, one still thinks about them a lot. As the hangar doors closed, it was over. And it was a very good time.